why cannabis and why dadgrass?
Whenever I sparked up, it was a total roll of the dice on what kind of experience I was going to have. And really, it was like, today's weed gets you too damn high. Wanting just a really high quality, but lower potency option out on the market.
How do you go from your first $10,000 to your first 100?
The power of brand, when we're talking about branding, we've been building dadgrass with a capital B as a brand rather than just a product.
Welcome to Growth Talks, where we deep dive into the world of growth and marketing with industry leaders. I'm Krystina Rubino, the General Manager of Offline Services at Right Side Up, and your host. Today, I'm so excited to chat with Ben Starmer, the CEO and co-founder of Dadgrass, a national cannabis brand. And before Ben started Dadgrass, Ben was the global marketing director at Levi Strauss & Company, leading the premium, entertainment, and music, as well as new business divisions over the course of his 10-year tenure. In this episode, we're going to dive into the highs and lows of building a bootstrapped e-commerce business in the challenging world of cannabis, learn what inspired Ben to switch from corporate marketing leader to entrepreneurial founder, how to grow a business when you can't use one of the world's largest advertising platforms, and some memorable stories along the way. So let's get to it. Ben, thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited to talk with you.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having me. This is great to be here.
Of course. No. So it's so funny because I've only really known you since you were the founder of Dadgrass, but in looking in your background and just in our conversations over the years, you've made a pretty substantial shift in your career. I've also made the switch in my own career from like corporate to startup. But what inspired you to say, okay, I'm going to shift from like global corporate marketing at the highest levels, the highest budgets to like, I'm going to start a boots on the ground startup?
Good question. Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, honestly, it even starts a little bit before Levi's, I think. I had moved to San Francisco to pursue food and wine in a career capacity, so outside of restaurants, and thought San Francisco was kind of the promised land of that, and so moved there on kind of a hope and a dream, and ended up meeting some folks at Levi's, and ended up kind of falling ass backwards into that role, and really loved it for a lot of reasons, particularly the storytelling and the legacy of Levi's as a brand. And I had the great fortune to be involved in some really great and kind of left of center divisions within the company, which was really fantastic. But it's funny, I never set out to be a quote unquote marketing person. I have a very distinct memory of being offered my first marketing job and really hemming and hawing and saying to the person that offered it to me, like, I don't really want to become a marketing guy. Like that was never a part of my vision for my life. And of course I said yes and never looked back and had a blast and have loved it ever since. As I mentioned, when I was there, I got to work on some really amazing products and projects and really fell in love with marketing and the storytelling aspect of it. But when looking around the company, particularly in the marketing division, I didn't see a whole lot of roles that I really wanted to grow into. And I knew in the back of my mind that I was always going to strike out on my own. And I wasn't quite sure exactly when that was. And then the idea for Dadgrass came about quite a while ago, and actually, fairly early into my tenure at Levi's. And I kind of just was able to put that in my back pocket and know when the time is right, I can switch out. And so I was really lucky to be there for that time. And they were incredibly supportive, even as I was building out the idea for Dadgrass. At a certain point, it was like, okay, this is ready and I need to take the leap or this won't get out of first gear. And so I was fortunate enough to do that.
That's amazing. And it's so nice to hear that. It's funny because we think sometimes of like corporations as like these giant, unfeeling, immovable beasts. And I've met so many people, and I'm sure you still have so many people that you've worked with along the way that have been supportive of you and your journey and like really wanted success for you and happiness for you. Let's get into more of like the inspiration behind starting Dadgrass, because like you said, this is something like you were percolating on this for a while. This wasn't something where you were like, okay, I'm going to like quit my job and then I'm going to go and I'm going to do this and I'm going to start this company. But like why cannabis and why dad grass?
Really, it started. I was living in San Francisco, obviously, with Levi's, and at that point, it was before recreational cannabis became legal. You still had you got your medical card, and you could walk down to the dispensary, and you could go in and talk to the bud tender, tell them exactly what you were looking for, what you weren't looking for, and leave that dispensary feeling really confident with whatever you purchased. Unfortunately, whenever I sparked up, it was a total roll of the dice on what kind of experience I was going to have, whether I was going to, turn into a pumpkin at the dinner party, if I was going to have to leave the second set of the show. And really, it was like, today's weed gets you too damn high. And wanting just a really high quality, but lower potency option out on the market. So that's really it was really kind of the catalyst. My dad always called weed grass, and I just thought, dad grass was too good of a name not to name the company that. Also evokes, for anyone that knows the term dad weed, there's a bit of a pejorative, but low potency weed that you can, smoke and have a sessionable time and not just absolutely go to the moon.
It's like the difference between like, I'm going to have like a nice session, light beer, whatever. And like, I'm going to go for like 1,000,000,000% IPA and get absolutely hammered and be a no good time for anybody involved.
Totally.
Right.
We make a lot of comparisons to the alcohol industry or drinking culture. It's like, sometimes you want a martini. Sometimes you want 2 or 3 martinis. And that's a great time when you want that experience. But sometimes you just want a light beer or an Aperol spritz, and we can be that lighter option that, that doesn't need to be, like I said, going to the moon or getting obliterated. For so many people, there's of course a huge group of people that, need that or really desire that and can function in an amazing way. I just don't happen to be one of them.
Well, it's like any other product and any founder that I've talked to. It's like, well, I wanted to start this because I saw the need in the market for it. My own personal experiences, somebody I care about's personal experiences, like it came from a very genuine place. And the other thing is, I kind of mentioned this already, but Dadgrass's branding is just a solid 110%. I love, for anybody that isn't familiar with the tagline, it's the greatest thing. It's low dose, full toke, like your parents used to smoke. And I am obsessed with it. Like it's just even just the packaging, the quality of it. I'm a customer, like in full disclosure, and I'm not biased at all. But it's even the collaborations that you guys do. Like, talk to me a little bit about like how is your experience in marketing translated to like the very particular vision that you guys have? Because a lot of CBD products, even if you go to a local store or you order them or whatever, I don't want to say the branding's an afterthought, but a lot of the time it just feels like kind of like cheap, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you so much. The branding is something that we enjoy a lot and we have a lot of fun with. And it's really, it's so central to us just as individuals and as a company. And, whether it was Levi's or the Grateful Dead or, vintage, it's like having these classic and hopefully timeless pieces really just kind of makes up a lot of our aesthetic, what we want to be around. And so having that come out in the packaging was quite frankly a really fulfilling and really fun experience in designing it.
Yeah. But this is what I mean. Like it even just like in the embossing and the choices, but also the collaborations. And we'll get into a little bit like the very standard path for startups. And, we haven't spent a ton of time talking about growth yet, because what's really interesting to me is that you guys haven't had the very traditional, like, okay, I'm going to launch my product. I'm going to produce a certain amount of it. I'm going to go through these traditional marketing channels. Like, the way that you guys have kind of grown is a little unconventional when it comes to the world of like, okay, we're going to set up a campaign on Meta and set it and forget it. One, to your point about like the inspirations that you've had and just the collaborations that you guys have done, to grow the brand. Like, you guys have worked with George Hamilton's estate. You guys have a current collaboration with Truffle Man. Like, how much has collaboration been in your DNA, and how much has that helped you like grow over the years?
Yeah, I mean, collaboration has been pretty central. I was able to do a decent amount of the collaboration work at Levi's, and so was my co-founder. And so we've just always really believed in the power of collaboration and aligning two different communities together for a product that we believe, from both sides of the collaboration will be beneficial to our mutual communities. And so that's always just been really central and so much fun. As far as the George Harrison collaboration, I mean, that we're still pinching ourselves that was even possible. We have a dear friend who gave me a call, and this was in our early days, like early days, I think our first year. And he's like, "Hey, the George Harrison estate wants to chat with you." And it was just like, pardon my French, but like, fuck off, like, and it was like, no, seriously. And, we hopped on with Danny, and we were, talking about Dadgrass and George. And, he was really thrilled with like the humor that Dadgrass had kind of implicitly, and thought his dad would get a kick out of it. And he actually suggested All Things Must Grass. And this was a project around All Things Must Pass and the 50th anniversary of that. And it was just like, we all just lost it. And from there, we started building. So that was just an incredible one. And yeah, definitely a feather in the cap that we weren't expecting. Feel very blessed and honored to have that. So that was amazing. And we did one with Margot Price about a year ago, who's this amazing, if you don't know her, amazing country / Americana kind of alt country musician. And she's just like the best. And we had so much fun with that, and totally brought the brand to a totally different audience that had a lot of fun with it as well. So, and then Truffle Man, for those that weren't in the Bay Area in the aughts and the teens, might not know him, but he is this legendary figure that would roam around Dolores Park with these big copper kettles of these chocolate truffles. And you'd be, like very of the time, MGMT is playing in the background, and you're laying on a blanket and you can buy your infused truffle. And so to do a project with him, like a legitimate project, was super satisfying, super fun. And the truffles are absolutely delicious. We can't take any credit for them, but so.
Well, no, but it's interesting because it's like you talked about like the synergy between audiences and audience building, and like bringing something like bringing Dadgrass to a new audience that might not have otherwise been exposed to it. And the most traditional way that a lot of marketers do that for their products is through paid media, and specifically through Facebook and Instagram via Meta, right? And what was so and full disclosure, Right Side Up has worked with Dadgrass, on and off for years on podcast advertising and other channels, where it's so frustrating. But in a way, I feel like it actually helped you guys take a non-traditional, more almost like sustainable approach to growing the business, because Meta is just not an option that was available to you at the time that you started this business. And that, like, how did you guys overcome that in your e-commerce strategy? Was it like a concerted thing to say, we're going to do collaborations to open up another audience, we're going to unlock affiliate, we're going to unlock, like, what are the other channels that you guys were like, okay, we've got the brand, we've got the product, we're starting to look at collaborations. Like, how do you go from your first $10,000 to your first 100, right?
Good question. I think this actually is a tie-in to one of your earlier questions that I didn't fully answer, but actually just the power of brand when we were talking about branding, and what we saw and what we really believe in is, you were asking about bringing a CBD product to market, where, we really believe in the power of branding. And so we've been building Dadgrass with a capital B as a brand rather than just a product, and just a commodity that you can pick up. And that's been really central to everything that we do, from the packaging design to our website, to our copy, to how we show up, where we show up. Our wholesale is non-traditional for a cannabis product. Because we're federally legal hemp, we're able to be sold in stores that most people have never seen a cannabis product. So the majority of our wholesale, we're in about 400 stores around the country, are small independent boutiques, clothing boutiques, gift and home stores, higher end bottle shops, and grocery stores, neighborhood bodegas, etc. So the way that I've always thought about it is meeting people that they're going to be at places that they're going to be at in their normal life. So I personally am not necessarily going to go to the strip mall and go to the head shop and try to find a CBD product. But when you're shopping and you have a letterpressed card that you want to pick up for someone special, or you're picking up a nice bottle of mezcal at the bottle shop or something, and you see dadgrass, it can kind of bring you in. And so that was an early strategy, quite frankly, of just aligning with shops and other brands that are in those shops to do some work for us.
The instinct for a lot of brands is to now, if you're starting like D2C e-commerce, right? The instinct is to go hard on e-commerce first and foremost. And I don't want to say like disengage with wholesaling as a strategy, but almost, right? You're already on the good from Meta and you're like, this is really easy. I'll just throw another X amount of money at this. And like my customer acquisition costs are fairly static and whatever else. And it's kind of like, it's like Build-A-Bear almost, but like for brands.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah,
we launched just like almost literally 4 years ago today, and it's March 6th. So we launched 2 weeks before the lockdowns happened. We didn't realize we were going to be an e-com company. That wasn't really what we had set out to do. We knew it was going to be a big part of the business, but we were suddenly thrust into being a DTC brand through and through almost immediately. So that was a fun challenge, but it was definitely unexpected. So that's a big aspect of it. I had not had any e-com or DTC experience in my past, and neither had either of my co-founders. So it was definitely a learning curve. That's for sure. As far as the marketing aspect, in those early days, well, first off, we're bootstrapped, so we didn't have a budget. We just knew we had this product that we thought was a lot of fun and figured and believed fulfilled a need that not a whole lot of people were talking about. And that if we could just get the word out, that it would start to spread. So that's what we did. We gave away a ton of product. We gave away a ton of product to our friends. It was like, and that was fulfilling and satisfying on a lot of different reasons, just because it's fun to, share what you've been building. And then those friends were sharing on their Instagrams. We actually had a couple folks that were more plugged into specific communities do like mini seeding programs within their communities. So that was a big momentum driver for us. And in that early COVID time, so many people were online. Everyone was really, really supportive of small business as well. And so not for nothing, it was fortuitous time to launch.
I can only imagine, like the COVID high was the high of highs, right? Like we work with a lot of e-com that had their supply chain disrupted and like wound up working in far larger capacities, and then like saw demand shift and change and fall a little after COVID, or their customer base changed and matured and evolved. And like, besides like you guys had to have been packing orders yourselves at some point during COVID. Like it must have been absolutely effing insane, right?
We still do a lot of our own production, and we still do all of our own fulfillment and shipping. So those days we were rolling. I rolled the first, dozen batches of joints. Like it was a small time operation for sure. Even like early days, I would do weekend deliveries around LA and get into my old C10 pickup with a mask and like, nitrate gloves on and deliver packages to people just because it was a way to build community even in this really funky time, right? But yeah, and we were still so small that we were able to do that, right? So had we had, had we had a bunch of money in the bank and like really take advantage of that time, it would have been different. But for where we were being bootstrapped and just cash flowing the business, it was fantastic.
I think there is something to be said for a bootstrapped company. And it's funny. So one of my questions, one of my first one is going to be bootstrap or venture capital. Which one, Ben?
Bootstrap.
Even after having to deliver orders yourself in your pickup truck and like 110 times you do it over again.
100%.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It was a real specific decision. The origins of Dadgrass, we were originally going to be a California recreational cannabis brand, which was regulated. And in order to do that, there's a whole complex supply chain that requires a lot of money and a lot of investment. And so we were pretty far down that path early on. Like I said, we had originally built the brand to go into that space. If anyone's familiar with California cannabis right now, I think we dodged the bullet. But we had gone into that space, and then we found out about the Farm Bill of 2018, which made hemp federally legal. And in that Farm Bill, just to get a little bit technical, it defines cannabis as cannabis sativa L, as it's called marijuana if it has 0.3% THC on a net weight basis or more, which is illegal, or it's cannabis sativa L with 0.3% THC or less on a dry net weight basis is called hemp. Same plant though, basically, for all intent purposes. There's some technicalities. I'm sure I'd get some pushback there, but so we had some really good friends that were amazing legacy growers that started growing hemp. I was super skeptical. I mean, obviously, you see a big Grateful Dead poster in my background. I've been around a lot of hemp necklaces in the lot.
You're like, I am not smoking a hemp necklace from a Grateful Dead parking lot. Like, I have standards.
I tried to smoke hemp in 4th grade. I rolled it up in some computer paper. I got some string at Michael's. It was not a good experience. I wasn't really excited to go back to that. But
yeah, little oregano action. Yeah, everybody's been there.
Yeah, exactly. But we got these samples, and it was like, oh my God, this is exactly what we were looking for. Yeah, and looks and smells and smokes just like really great, phenomenal pot. Except for it doesn't send you to the moon; just kind of chills you out, relaxes you. The stress of the day kind of melts away. We say it's like having a glass of wine, but not the whole bottle. So you feel a little shift, but it's not intoxicating. And then the business side of things, it's federally legal. You can sell it online. You can ship it via USPS. And so we shifted the whole business into that. And that's what we launched with. And we are still a federally legal hemp brand. So although now we do have some federally legal THC products out on the market, which are really fantastic. So
yeah, it's crazy how this was bootstrap or VC. Because you went down the VC path and then you were just like, no. And also like, thank goodness. But it's even interesting just how much like the conversation in our country has changed in the last 10 years, five years, 2 years even, where you're like starting to like hear people talk about getting marijuana descheduled and like you know what I mean? Like it's a really interesting thing. And I'm glad you bootstrapped. And I'm glad you took the kind of like the path less traveled a little bit.
And so were we. I mean, like I said, it was a real specific choice. Once we realized we could go into hemp and we could essentially do it ourselves with the really relatively small investment, that was the choice. And then we could build at our own pace. We could make the decisions that we needed to make at the time we needed to make them. I was with my job for the first 9 months of the brand, which was great. I wouldn't have been able to do that with VC. And, it was really the right move for us. Now, would have been nice to, raise a little money in the ZERP environment. Sure. But ultimately we're really satisfied with what we've done. And that's changing now. We're 4 years in and we've got some new product expansion that we're thinking about that almost certainly will require investment. And so, we're getting into that space now, but it's nice to have been able to build this on our own terms for a lot of different reasons. And it's not that a VC is bad or investors are bad by any means,
No.
but just the way that we've been able to build the foundation, build the team, build the product, build the business has been really nice to do it on our own terms.
Yeah, you're talking to somebody who's one of the earliest employees at Right Side Up, and we're also bootstrapped. And there is something, I have grown so much at this company, like personally, professionally, everything, just by us all figuring it out, like on our own and with the input of some like very valuable friendships and advice and all of that along the way. So I totally get it. We have a little, I'm gonna take a pause here just because we have a dumb little game that we've decided that we like to play with everybody called the A/B test, right? So you know how you're always A/B testing something in the business. You're testing copy, you're testing landing pages, you're testing whatever you're testing. So I thought it'd be fun. We thought it'd be fun to do like a little mix of like a work related and a funsies A and B test. So you have to pick one variable to win. Okay, so data driven or intuition based?
Oh, intuition, but really trying hard to focus on data driven.
But you naturally lean towards intuition based.
Yeah, for sure. But we're learning and we're really digging into that. We have it's been a pretty concerted effort over the last, I would say, 9 months, and even more so in the next, really just future to come. I think that's one of those things that we've gotten to a point where it's like, okay, we can figure things out ourselves, or we can bring an expert in. And it doesn't mean necessarily outsourcing things, but we can learn from other people and learn from the data and come to a result much quicker than just intuition. But intuition's certainly at the forefront of the problem solving.
Well, it's a little bit of art, a little bit of science, right? Like you're never gonna, go too hard in either direction.
Yeah.
Board games or video games?
Board games.
Favorite?
It's been a while. Growing up, it was always Sorry or Parcheesi. Recently, with my brother and dad, we play Settlers of Catan.
Are you morning person or night owl?
Morning.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, generally pretty early. I'm stoked if I'm going to bed at 9:15.
It's so funny to me. I'm like, man, dude, I'm at least in bed and watching an NBA game or something around 9:15, 9:30. Like that's just 100%. User generated content or professionally produced content?
Oh man, if you look at our Instagram or our Instagram, you'll realize that we definitely relied on our dinosaur tendencies and experiences of being in marketing for big brands, but we're really trying to shift that. We realize that we're kind of a relic and a legacy in that standpoint. From a social standpoint, for me, I just love, I love really beautiful photos. And I've been working with our photographer. He's been a dear friend for a really long time. So I feel so fortunate that, we're able to bring that to the brand. I would never lose it, but there's also been a real reality check of we've got to move beyond that. It can't just be that.
Yeah, there's a speed component to it too, right? Totally. Mac or PC?
Mac.
I can't wait for somebody to say PC because it's immediately I use a PC for gaming, but after working in corporate agency world and in corporate, I'm just No, you'll pry this Mac from my cold dead hands at this point, honestly.
No, but I mean, you'll get to someone that's like a technical founder and they're like, I love my Lenovo,
And I love that for them. Everybody choose your own. That is part of your journey, my friend. But me, I'm on Google Sheets now. Like, I was a holdout because of Excel, and now I'm just like, nah. Dogs or cats?
dogs. Yeah,
I'm not going to say there's a right answer.
I think that's the diplomatic thing to say. Yes.
Remote or in office?
That's a great question. I've been remote for the majority of my career. Like even at Levi's, 2 years into Levi's, they moved me down to LA, kicking and screaming. I never thought I'd live here. Then I fell in love with it. But so I've been remote for almost 15 years, I think. And I've always loved it. That being said, with our own company, there's a real desire to have that collaboration and that connection with folks, or otherwise, you look up from your laptop and you're like, oh shit, I've been in this room for the last 4.5 years, like, so I really value remote. I think there's a lot to be said about having a common space, but I mean, I say that and we're all remote, so.
Well, it could be aspirational.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll end my little quiz with a fun one. Time travel to the past or the future?
Past.
You have a specific time in mind?
It sounds so, I guess, cliche, but the late 60s, early 70s would be such a great time for music and culture and cars and motorcycles and all the, and travel and all that kind of stuff. It would be hard not to want to go there. But even, I mean, I think I certainly before then as well, but that would probably be my first choice.
I mean, any great jam band is, everybody's kind of good at their own individual thing, but there's something to be said for when the sound comes together. So I do think there is something in just knowing what music you're a fan of and knowing the way that you guys all work together and trust each other to kind of like stay in your lanes, but collaborate with the right outside parties and the, kind of the right way internally. Like, do you think that ethos has infused the way you guys work and think about working together?
Great question. Not one that I necessarily was top of mind, but as you were speaking, absolutely. We've got just so much trust in each other and a part of the whole team. I mean, we've been really lucky with some amazing team members and a really incredible founding team. Josh and I, we actually met at Levi's, and so we've known each other for 15 plus years and just have a really solid connection, and we can kind of into it with each other. So, and then the I don't want to say new because everyone's been around for quite some time, but everyone who's on the team now, we've really hit that rhythm. So yeah, I think that's a very generous but a pretty apt comparison.
The way that you guys have grown as a company and some of just in the journey of it across the way. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but success as a business, I mean, success in your career, success in anything is not linear, right? Like, I'm sure to your point, even just about COVID and the kind of wrench, but good. I don't know what a word for like a good wrench is, like an unanticipated detour that the business took that wound up like kind of informing what you guys have done. Like, what are some of the earliest successes you can remember, or some of I don't want to say mistakes that you've made, but like opportunities you wish you would have taken better advantage of, or stuff you left on the table that you're like, oh, that would have been really interesting. Or I always think about what I would tell myself earlier in my career, earlier in my tenure here at Right Side Up, even like building a business.
I think I'm going to start with opportunities first. And we've had a tendency to be a bit perfectionist, and that has often manifested itself with if we can't do it right, then we're not going to do it. In a small business and a small team, there's never enough time to do anything. So those things that you think you're going to get around to and either, get the expertise or learn or finally tackle, they kind of get kicked down a road a little bit. And so there's been a handful of those things that I wish we would have gotten out of our own way and got into initiatives earlier and just known that perfect isn't the end, or not let perfect be the enemy of the good, and just kind of jump into it and learn. I think that's one of the things that we've learned, from an opportunity standpoint. And of course, a lot of times and probably more often that's benefited us, but there's certain opportunities that are like, yeah, I wish we would have jumped on that a little bit earlier, or, XYZ. It's probably the case with a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, but it's definitely something that we've, identified as something that we want to kind of improve upon. As far as mistakes, there's just too many to list. Truly, it would be a long, sad podcast if if I went through them. But one really big one that we've also had a ton of learnings from was miscalculating the size of an opportunity and then orienting the business trajectory based on that opportunity. So that's something that I did. There was a couple projects early on that I thought, quite frankly, were just going to be total game changers, and, set the team, set the business, all on these things. They were very long projects, and they didn't pan out the way that we thought. And, when you're, one small team and you have a lot of the energy going into that, you really realize how that affects, the trajectory, right? And so it's something that thankfully we learned early on, and we've been able to go back to that lesson, when needed. And, it's easy to get caught up in this like shiny object idea and go, okay, well, this is going to transform the business and we're going to put all our attention on it. And stepping back and saying, okay, well, based on what we know from the past and we believe in the future, what is the balanced way to go about this? And of course, there's still times where it's like, oh no, this is the opportunity is now, and we need to run and we need to sprint for it. But being just a little bit more measured for what that means, 360 view for the business and for the company. So I think that's probably the biggest learning for me.
Yeah, that's super insightful. You kind of don't know you're out over your skis until you are, sometimes, is what I've learned. And I also tell people often, I'm like, everybody's just making it up as they go along, right? Like, didn't you think that when you were a CEO or you were in manager or whatever, you're like, oh, I'll have it figured out by then because those people look like they figured it out, right?
Nope.
No way. Everybody is figuring it out the best that they can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Going back to your earlier question about, how we grew awareness and grew the business early on, earned media, just press was a big thing for us. And we got about a year in, we got 2 big placements, one with GQ and one with Vice, which, like, for me, all throughout my career with Levi's, but predating that to, when I was a kid, those 2 titles were so, instrumental and like such great, amazing titles, like kind of the pinnacle of what I really wanted, especially, just kind of all throughout my career. So to have those hit was just so thrilling. And they were like back to back within a month. That was a really, really exciting, really fun time.
And actually, you guys have gotten a ton of really, really good press. And I love reading the user reviews on your website too, and just like what people say about the product online. What do you guys even get at like the customer service email or like funny feedback that you guys have gotten from people, and like, or unexpected feedback that you guys have gotten from people? And like, I mean, some of that can be perspective changing too sometimes, right?
Our main consumer group are folks that are like 25 to 45. So then it's a lot of, we do occasionally get folks that have given this product or sharing this product with their dads, and then they're filming that and sending us in, and those are always just so much fun. Yeah, it's a real kick. And then we do some calls, like, send us pictures, of your family, like vintage pictures, and those are always super fun too. And then, perspective changing, Daggrass is through and through like a leisure brand, right? There's so many other kind of better for you and wellness brands within the cannabis space. We've just taken a different, more recreational, more leisurely approach to it. So we don't play this up often, but we get a significant amount of feedback, whether it's emails or reviews, where people are like, this product has changed my life. I've been in chronic pain for XYZ. Or, I just spoke with someone, I think it was 2 days ago, that they said that, their mother has stage 4 cancer and she won't touch THC, but these joints have totally changed her life. And so she gets them, on the regular basis. And so that's always a major perspective changer, just like in your day, like, oh, wow, this stuff really helps people in a way that we're not necessarily always thinking about, which is super rewarding, of course. And then, I'm still the guy answering the CS calls. So if you ever call in, you'll probably get me. And it's always fun to, ham it up with whoever's on the other line.
Just based on what you've said, like, have you guys skewed older at times and you're just like, wow, that's so surprising, I didn't think we were going to? Or are there any people that have like picked up your product and you're just like that audience and those consumers picking up your product has changed how you've approached future collaborations or future marketing?
Yeah, well, I would say less how it changed our marketing, but coming out, 2020, we were really, really deliberate not to become a dude's brand and a macho brand and, an old white guy brand. Because quite frankly, it could have gone there really easily. And everyone before we launched thought that was it. Like, oh yeah, like, 80s kind of macho guys, or this kind of stuff, and bikini babes and like Daggrass, and it's like, that's not core to any of us, and that's not what we want out in the world, and that's certainly not what we're going to build. And so we have been really deliberate to not ever fall into those kind of machismo or super macho tropes. And we've found that that's paid off. So our number one demographic is women 25 to 35. And that's held through from when we started till today. And, we say you don't have to be a dad or a dude to enjoy Daggrass. It's a vibe. So it's been a pleasant surprise, but it's something, that we were really deliberate about. I think it surprises more people outside of the company than it does us, but it's really validating, and we're happy that that's the case. So yeah.
My last question is one that I ask everybody, because with like growth marketing and grow bros and all of the culture around tech and startups, there's always like growth hacks or growth hacking or growth hackers. And you hear it all the time, but I want to know, like, what's your favorite growth non-hack?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a hack so much as just a learning that's become really apparent for us in the last 9 months. Is, when we came out with Daggrass, we were just joints, right? And so it was all about a vibe. There was not much about specific specs or anything like that. And then we expanded our product line. We went into edibles, gummies, and tinctures, and we started to shift our marketing at that point really about these stats and specifications and features of the products. So, 10 milligrams or, vegan or non-GMO. And it took a really long time to realize, like, ultimately, that's not what people are buying. They're buying a feeling. They're buying what the product makes them feel and how they're going to experience life after they've consumed the product. And so that was this really like, no duh. We used to do that. It was so central to our marketing. Why didn't we put it towards, these products? But really a light bulb moment. And so as we've switched it, I guess, like I said, not a hack, but we've definitely seen the fruits of that messaging change. Is, like I said, ultimately people want to engage with something that's going to make them feel a certain way, not a stat or a figure.
You still have to market.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. You build a brand that people want to use. You're curating an experience that people want to have. And at the end of the day, like, you still have to build that and then stay true to it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, dude, I thank you so much for coming and joining me. And this has been awesome. We went all around, and I really appreciate all of your candor and your honesty, and I respect the living heck out of what you guys have built there. So,
oh, well, thank you so much for the time. This has been fantastic.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Growth Talks. We hope you found our discussion insightful and fun. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more valuable content. And if you're excited and ready to start up-leveling your growth strategies and execution, Right Side Up has you covered. Right Side Up is a leading growth marketing agency that has partnered with over 1,000 companies of all stages and sizes to help them meet and exceed their growth goals. With expertise across all growth marketing functions, we can help you evaluate product market fit, develop customer acquisition strategies, navigate executional challenges and staffing gaps, and make pivotal decisions with confidence. And whether you need one individual or a custom-built, full-service team, we'll find you the right A+ talent. Visit us at rightsideup.com to see how we can help you and your company grow.